The match struck with a hiss that cut through the humid Spanish night like a gunshot, and Elena, her mother's hands trembling just once before stealing into the grip of authority, held the flame to the corner of the photograph. Annie's scream tore from her throat not as rage, but as the raw unraveling of a secret she'd buried deeper than the roots of the olive trees lining their coastal village. In that single blaze, the image of her, grinning wildly, Ariana's arms slung around her shoulders under a canopy of stars, curled into ash, and with it went the fragile proof that love could bloom in places where tradition demanded it wither. Annie had always known her mother saw the world in black and white, the way a police chief in a dusty corner of western Spain must. Suspects in cuffs, reports filed in triplicate, justice served with the cold precision of a gavel. But love? Love was the gray smudge on the page, the fingerprint that didn't match. Growing up in the sun-baked village of El Faro, where the Atlantic winds whipped salt into your hair and the cliffs whispered secrets to the sea, Annie learned early to hide her colors. At 16 she'd stolen glances at the girls in her school, their laughter like forbidden fruit, while boys fumbled awkwardly at dances she skipped. By 20 she fled to Madrid for art school, chasing canvases that let her paint what her heart couldn't say. But home pulled her back like the tide. Her father's death in a fishing accident, leaving Elena to raise her alone, badge and all. It was on one of those reluctant returns 3 years ago that Annie met Ariana. The village festival of San Juan was in full swing, bonfires dotting the beach like scattered stars, the air thick with the scent of grilled sardines and blooming jasmine. Annie, 25 then, had wandered away from the crowds, her sketchpad under her arm, seeking the quiet edge where the waves met the rocks. She was drawing the silhouette of a lone gull against the bonfire glow when a voice, smooth as aged sherry, interrupted. "You make the ordinary look like poetry. Mind if I watch?" Ariana was a transplant like so many in El Faro 30, with roots in Seville but a life carved from wanderlust. She ran a small bookstore in the village square, shelves crammed with dog-eared novels in Spanish, English and French, her olive skin glowing under the perpetual sun, long black waves framing a face that held both mischief and melancholy. She'd come to the coast to escape a failed engagement, or so she told anyone who asked, but her eyes said it was more. A search for something that fit without forcing the seams. That night, as fireworks cracked overhead, Ariana sat beside Annie on the damp sand, their shoulders brushing accidentally at first, then not so accidentally. They talked until the fires died to embers, about Frida Kahlo's unapologetic self-portraits, the ache of loving in silence, the way the sea never apologized for its storms. By dawn, Annie's sketchpad held not just the gull, but Ariana's profile, captured in hasty charcoal strokes that betrayed the quickening in her chest. They met again the next day at the bookstore, Ariana pressing a worn copy of The Price of Salt into her hands with a wink. For when the words come easier than the drawings. It was the first time Annie felt seen, not as Elena's dutiful daughter or the village oddity who traded fiestas for solitude, but as herself, raw, vibrant, alive. Their romance unfolded like the slow unfurling of a fern in spring, tentative at first, then fierce. Stolen afternoons in Ariana's apartment above the shop, where sunlight slanted through lace curtains onto rumpled sheets, their hands tracing maps on each other's skin that no atlas could chart. Evenings walking the cliffs, Ariana's laughter echoing as she recited Lorca poems, her arm linked through Annie's like it was the most natural tether in the world. Annie painted her in secret. A series of oils on canvas, Ariana's eyes like polished onyx, her smile a curve that promised home. They dreamed aloud of leaving El Faro, opening a gallery bookshop hybrid in Barcelona, where love could breathe without the village's prying eyes. But El Faro was small. Its whispers carried on the wind like pollen. Elena noticed the changes in Annie first. The flush in her cheeks, the late nights, the sketchpad clutched tighter than before. As chief of police for the region, Elena commanded respect. Her uniform starched, her decisions final, her love for Annie a fortress built on sacrifice. She'd buried her husband at sea, raised their girl on grit and gumption, teaching her that vulnerability was a crack in the armor. "We protect what's ours," she'd say, polishing her badge. "No one else will." To Elena, Annie's glow was a puzzle, one she attributed to a fleeting crush on some fisherman's son, until the day she found the photographs. It was a Tuesday, market day, the air humming with haggling over fresh figs and anchovies. Annie had left her camera bag in the kitchen after a weekend hike with Ariana, the developed prints tucked inside like contraband. Elena, tidying as she did when worry gnawed, unzipped it out of habit. The top photo slid out. Annie and Ariana on the cliff path, mid-laugh, Ariana's hand on Annie's waist. Their faces tilted close, the sea a turquoise blur behind. Elena's breath caught, the room tilting like a ship in swell. She flipped through the stack. Intimate shots, stolen moments, love etched in emulsion. Her hand shook as she gathered them, the weight of betrayal settling like lead. That night, Annie came home to the smell of smoke, acrid and final. Elena stood in the backyard, the stone patio lit by a single lantern. A metal bowl cradled in her lap. The photos burned one by one, flames licking the edges, curling the images into oblivion. "This ends now," Elena said, her voice a blade honed by years of interrogations. Annie froze in the doorway, the world narrowing to that fire, her heart a drumbeat of denial. "Mom, what are you?" "She's poison, Annie. Turning you against your own blood, your own life." Elena's eyes, usually so steady, glistened with something sharper than tears. Fear, fury. The unraveling of a worldview where daughters married men, bore children carried on the line. She dropped the last photo, the one of them kissing under the olive grove, and ground it under her boot before it caught. "I won't let you throw everything away for this." Annie lunged forward, but the ashes scattered on the wind, gray flecks dancing like mocking confetti. She sank to her knees, sobs racking her frame. The loss not just of paper but of the tangible proof that her love was real witnessed. Elena turned away, her silhouette rigid against the lantern's glow, whispering, "I did it for you, mihija. You'll thank me one day." But thanks never came. In the weeks that followed, a chasm opened wider than the Atlantic. Annie avoided Ariana at first, shame burning hotter than the fire, convinced her mother's influence was a tide she couldn't fight. Ariana, sensing the shift, waited at the bookstore with chamomile tea and open arms, but Annie's texts grew sparse, her visits halted. "Talk to me," Ariana pleaded over a crackling phone line one night. "Whatever it is, we face it together." "I can't," Annie whispered, glancing at Elena's closed office door, the badge glinting on the desk like a sentinel. "Not yet." The betrayal stung deepest, not just the burning but the erasure, as if her love for Ariana was a crime scene to be scrubbed clean. Yet love, like the sea, erodes resistance. One stormy evening, as rain lashed the cliffs, Annie drove to Ariana's under cover of thunder. They collided in the doorway, wet and desperate, holding each other as if the world might dissolve. "She burned them," Annie confessed, the words spilling like floodwater. "The photos. All of them. Said you're destroying me." Ariana pulled back, her dark eyes searching, then cupped Annie's face. "Then we'll make new memories. Ones no fire can touch." They did, in whispers and touches that rebuilt what was lost. But Elena's shadow loomed, her patrol circling the village like a hawk, her questions probing at dinner. "When will you settle down, Annie? Find a nice boy from a good family." The conflict simmered, a pot left too long on the flame, until it boiled over in ways neither could foresee. The summer heat in El Faro pressed down like a judgment, turning the air thick and unforgiving, mirroring the tension that coiled tighter in Annie's chest with each passing day. Ariana's bookstore became their sanctuary, a cool haven of ink and paper where they could steal hours amid the scent of old pages and fresh espresso. Ariana would lock the door at midday, drawing the curtains against the glare, and they'd curl on the worn velvet chaise, Annie's head in her lap, Ariana's fingers combing through her auburn curls. "Tell me about the girl who first made your heart stutter," Ariana murmured one afternoon, her voice a soothing cadence. Annie hesitated, the memory surfacing like a half-forgotten dream. "Her name was Sophia. Summer camp in the Pyrenees when I was 14. She had this laugh that echoed off the mountains, and one night by the lake, she kissed me under a sky full of fireflies. I thought it was magic." She paused, tracing the vein on Ariana's wrist. "But morning came, and she acted like it never happened. Said it was just camp stuff. I carried that silence for years." Ariana's touch stilled, her expression softening with empathy. "And now? With me." Annie lifted her gaze, meeting those onyx depths. "Now it's not magic, it's real. Steady. Like the cliffs holding back the sea." They kissed then, slow and deep, a reaffirmation that no ash could erase. But even in those moments doubt flickered, Elena's words echoing. Poison turning you against your own. Elena's campaign was subtle at first, the way a tide wears down stone. She increased her shifts, leaving notes about family dinners that went uneaten. Village gossip fueled by her position began to swirl. Whispers at the market about the American girl. Annie's Madrid accent marked her as outsider, and the bookish spinster from Seville. Elena never confronted Ariana directly, that would be beneath her rank, but she made her presence felt. A routine traffic stop outside the bookstore, papers checked twice over. A casual chat with the landlord, hinting at undesirable associations. Annie felt the noose tightening. One evening, after a particularly grueling day sketching tourists who saw only the postcard version of Spain, she confided in her best friend Mateo, over beers at the Harbor Tavern. Mateo, a lanky fisherman with a perpetual squint from the sun and a heart as open as the bay, had known Annie since childhood. "Your ma's got that look again," he said, nodding toward Elena's patrol car idling across the street. "Like she's hunting ghosts." "Or witches," Annie muttered, draining her glass. Mateo leaned in, his voice low. "Look, I've seen how you light up around Ariana. Don't let Elena snuff it out. Remember when she tried to stop you from art school? Said it was a hobby for dreamers? You went anyway." Annie nodded, but the fire in her gut warred with the chill of fear. Betrayal came not from Elena alone, but from the village's complicity, the way neighbors averted eyes, the sudden silence when she entered the bakery. It peaked on the night of the Virgin del Carmen procession, the village's annual maritime festival honoring the sea's patron saint. Boats decked in lights paraded the harbor, fireworks blooming like underwater flowers, the crowd a sea of white linens and prayers. Annie and Ariana slipped into the throng, hands brushing in the press, a thrill in the anonymity. They danced to the flamenco guitars, Ariana's hips swaying with a grace that drew Annie like a moth. For a moment the world receded, the cliffs, the whispers, Elena's badge. But as the procession wound toward the church, a figure emerged from the shadows. Sophia, Annie's first love, now 28, visiting from Barcelona with her husband and toddler in tow. Sophia's eyes locked on Annie's, widening in recognition, then softening with a nostalgia that twisted like a knife. "Annie? Dios mío, it's been forever." They hugged awkwardly, the scent of her perfume, jasmine and regret, stirring ghosts. Ariana stood aside, polite smile masking the flicker of unease, as Sophia introduced her family. "This is Luis, my husband, and little Carmen." The child gurgled, oblivious, while Luis shook hands with easy charm. The conversation flowed like wine, Sophia pulling Annie aside as the crowd thinned. "You look happy. That glow suits you." Her gaze drifted to Ariana, lingering. "She's beautiful." "Is she?" Annie nodded, throat tight. Sophia's smile faltered, then steadied. "I'm glad. After me I worried you'd close off. But you always were the brave one." "Brave." The word echoed as they parted, Sophia vanishing into the lights. But bravery curdled into doubt that night, alone in her room while Ariana worked late. What if Sophia was right? What if this was just another fleeting summer? Elena's voice slithered in, throwing everything away. Annie tossed, the sheets tangling like accusations. The next morning, betrayal struck its cruelest blow. Ariana called, voice hushed and urgent. "Annie, come to the shop. Now." Heart pounding, Annie raced through the waking village, the sun already a hammer. The bookstore door was ajar, the bell silent. Inside, chaos. Shelves toppled, books strewn like fallen soldiers, glass from the front window shattered across the floor. Ariana knelt amid the wreckage, her dress dusted with paper cuts, eyes red-rimmed. "What happened?" Annie gasped, dropping to her side, pulling her into an embrace that smelled of ink and fear. "Vandals," Ariana whispered. "Or someone who wanted to send a message. A note scrawled on torn pages from Orlando. Leave before you corrupt us all." Annie's blood ran cold. The handwriting, blocky and deliberate, too familiar from Elena's old case files. Not her mother, surely. But the seed of suspicion took root. They spent the day cleaning, hands brushing over spines as they pieced the world back together. "This place is my heart," Ariana said, shelving Wolfe beside Hemingway. "If they break it, they break me." Annie vowed silently to protect her, But the climax brewed on the horizon, a storm gathering force. Elena arrived that evening, investigating the break-in with measured calm. Her eyes swept the damage, then Ariana, cool as sea glass. "Tragic," she said, notepad in hand. "These coastal types superstitious. Best you consider moving on, señoritas." The word hung laced with implication. Annie confronted her later, in the patrol car parked under the street lamp. "Did you have something to do with this?" Elena's laugh was brittle. "Me? Your mother's sworn to uphold the law, Annie. Unlike some." The denial cut deeper than admission, planting thorns of mistrust. As Annie walked away, the village lights blurring through unshed tears, she realized the true conflict wasn't just mother against daughter. It was love against legacy, self against survival. In the quiet nights that followed, Ariana and Annie clung tighter, their bond a bulwark. They planned escapes in hushed tones. A train to Madrid, a life unyoked from El Faro's chains. But betrayal's shadow lengthened when Mateo pulled Annie aside at the tavern. "Heard something from the boys on the docks. Your ma's been talking to Sophia's family. Old favors pulling strings," said Ariana's trouble, "like back in Seville." The words landed like punches. "Sophia? The innocent encounter now poisoned?" Annie confronted Sophia via text, the reply a gut-wrench. "Didn't know she'd twist it. Sorry." The web tightened. Elena's influence, the village's echo chamber, turning allies to informants. Ariana, sensing the fracture, held Annie through the rage. "We're stronger than their fears," she said, their foreheads pressed together. But strength waned under siege, and the high tide of confrontation loomed. Autumn crept into El Faro like a reluctant guest, the winds sharpening off the Atlantic, stripping the olive leaves to silver skeletons that scratched against the windows. The vandalism at the bookstore lingered like a bruise, investigations yielding nothing but Elena's official reports, filed, forgotten. Ariana rebuilt with defiance, installing a brass bell that chimed brighter, stocking shelves with stories of queer icons. Audre Lorde, James Baldwin, the quiet revolutions of the page. Annie threw herself into painting, her studio a cramped attic above the family home. Canvases blooming with Ariana's form. Ethereal against cliff backdrops, fierce in the face of tempests. Their love deepened in the hush of fall, a romantic tether woven from small rituals. Picnics on hidden coves with Manchego and Membrillo. Ariana reading aloud from Giovanni's room as waves lapped their toes. Stargazing from the lighthouse ruins, Annie sketching constellations that mapped Ariana's freckles. "You're my North Star," Annie whispered one night, her breath warm on Ariana's neck. Ariana turned, eyes shimmering. "And you're the gravity that keeps me from drifting." In those moments, the drama of the village faded, replaced by a humanistic warmth, a belief that two souls could rewrite the script handed to them. But conflict is the sea's cruel companion to calm. Elena's pressure mounted, not in overt commands but in the slow poison of isolation. She suggested Annie take a job at the station, filing nothing more, tying her to the badge's orbit. Village invitations dried up. The annual Olive Harvest Festival passed without a nod to their door. Worse was the betrayal from within. Mateo's wife Clara, who'd once shared wine with Ariana, now crossed the street with averted eyes. "Elena's word is law here," she muttered when pressed. "Can't risk the kids' schooling." The breaking point shattered on All Saints' Day, when the dead were honored with marigolds and lanterns floating on the bay. Annie and Ariana joined the vigil, arm in arm under the guise of friendship, the crowd's murmur a veil. As prayers rose, Elena took the podium, her uniform impeccable, voice carrying like a siren's call. "We remember our losses, but we honor the living by upholding what binds us. Family, tradition, the unyielding truth of our roots." Her gaze found Annie's in the throng, a silent indictment. Afterward, as lanterns bobbed like lost souls, Sophia approached again, this time alone, her face pale under the moonlight. "Annie, I had to tell you, your mother came to me last week. Asked about Ariana. Dug for dirt from Seville. I didn't give her anything, but she knows people. Said she'd make things difficult if I didn't help." The confession hung heavy, Sophia's hands twisting her shawl. "I love my life now, but seeing you too, it reminds me of what I lost. Fight for it, okay?" Annie nodded numbly, the betrayal crystallizing. Elena, not content with burning photos, now weaponizing the past. Rage boiled over that night in a confrontation that echoed off the cliffs. Annie stormed the station after hours, finding Elena at her desk, poring over maps of smuggling routes. How could you? Annie hurled, slamming the door. Sophia? Really, Mom? Digging up ghosts to bury us? Elena's pen stilled, her face a mask cracking at the edges. I protect you, Annie. That woman, she's a drifter. No roots, no future. You'll wake up alone when she leaves, like your father left us to the sea. The words were a dam breaking, Elena rising, voice fracturing. I burned those pictures to save you from scandal, from this village turning on you, from me losing my only child to deviance. Deviance. Annie's laugh was bitter, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. This is love, Mom. Real, the kind that heals, not hides. Ariana sees me, the artist, the dreamer you called weak. She doesn't want to change me. She wants me whole. The room pulsed with their shared grief, Elena's hand reaching, then falling. You're my daughter. I can't watch you unravel. Unravel. The word haunted Annie as she fled to Ariana's, collapsing into her arms with the story spilling out. Ariana held her through the sobs, her own eyes dry but shadowed. Your mother's afraid, Amor. Of losing control, of the world shifting under her feet. But we can't live in her fear. They made love that night, not with urgency, but with the tender reverence of survivors, bodies a language of forgiveness and fortitude. Yet the climax crested weeks later. A storm of human frailty and unforeseen alliance. Winter's first gale howled in, waves crashing like accusations, when Ariana's past resurfaced. Not as rumor but as reckoning. A letter arrived at the bookstore, postmarked Seville. From her ex-fiancé Javier, claiming unpaid debts from their shared business, demanding repayment or legal action. It was a lie Ariana knew. Javier's parting shot from years ago, dusted off like an old grudge. But in El Faro, whispers amplified, trouble follows her. Run while you can. Panic set in. Ariana, ever independent, planned to handle it alone. Wire money she didn't have, sell books if needed. Annie discovered the letter hidden in a hollowed novel. The betrayal of secrecy stinging fresh. Why didn't you tell me? We're in this together. The argument erupted in the attic studio. Canvases witness to their fracture. Because I won't drag you down, Ariana shot back, voice breaking. Your mother's already winning, turning us against each other. The words landed like Elena's match, igniting doubt. Annie stormed out into the gale. Rain lashing her face as she climbed the cliffs, the sea a black maw below. There in the roar she screamed her pain, to the wind, the waves, the indifferent stars. Hours later, soaked and shivering, she returned to find Ariana gone, a note on the table. I love you too much to break you. Head to Barcelona. Find me when the storm passes. Heart shattered, Annie drove through the night, the road a blur of headlights and regret. But betrayal's full measure revealed itself at dawn, when Mateo's call pierced the fog. Ariana's in trouble. Javier showed up at the shop drunk, making threats. Elena intervened, arrested him. But she let slip something about knowing his story, pulling strings to bring him here. The revelation hit like thunder. Elena hadn't just dug. She'd orchestrated, allying with Ariana's ghosts to force the fracture. Annie wheeled the car around, tires screaming, racing back to El Faro as the sun breached the horizon, painting the cliffs in gold. The confrontation awaited. Not just with her mother, but with the raw truth of love's endurance. The station house stood sentinel against the dawn, its whitewashed walls glowing like bone in the strengthening light, the Spanish flag limp in the post-storm hush. Annie burst through the doors, dripping seawater and fury, her denim jacket heavy as chainmail. Elena was there, in the interrogation room, Javier cuffed to a chair, mid-30s, disheveled with a sailor's build and eyes bloodshot from more than the night. Ariana sat across, composed but pale, her black hair braided like armor, recounting the confrontation to a junior officer who scribbled notes with averted gaze. Ariana! Annie's voice cracked the sterile air, drawing all eyes. She crossed the room in strides, pulling Ariana up into a fierce hug, inhaling the familiar scent of lavender and resolve. I'm so sorry. The note, I thought. Ariana clung back, whispering. I couldn't let him near you. But Elena. She knew he was coming. The officer cleared his throat, uncomfortable, as Elena entered from the hall, Her uniform rumpled for the first time Annie could recall, collar askew, silver hair escaping its bun. Annie, go home. This is police business. Elena's tone brooked no argument, but her eyes, those sharp green sentinels, held a weariness that bordered on defeat. No. Annie released Ariana, stepping between them, her stance a mirror of her mother's authority. You brought him here. You summoned Javier like some medieval inquisitor, thinking it'd scare her away. Admit it. The room held its breath, Javier smirking from his corner like a spectator at a bullfight. Elena's jaw tightened, then sagged. I made inquiries. For your sake. To expose her instability before it consumed you. The confession landed soft, almost apologetic, but laced with the old venom. She's not family, Annie. She's a phase, a distraction from. From what? From living. Annie's voice rose, echoing off the cinderblock walls. You burned our photos, sicked the village on her shop, now this? You're not protecting me, you're erasing me. Because my love doesn't fit your neat little files. Tears welled, hot and unbidden. But she held her ground, Ariana's hand finding hers. A lifeline in the tempest. Elena's facade crumbled then, the police chief shrinking to a mother, raw and exposed. I lost your father to the waves, she said, voice a rasp. One morning he was there mending nets, the next gone. I swore I'd anchor you, keep you safe from that chaos. Your choices. They feel like losing you too. To something I can't fight, can't understand. She sank into a chair, the weight of years bowing her shoulders. Javier shifted, forgotten, as the women circled the heart of the storm. Ariana spoke first, her tone measured, humanistic. A bridge extended. Señora, I never wanted to take her from you. Annie's heart is vast enough for both. But love isn't a threat. It's the light that guides us home. She squeezed Annie's hand, her touch a silent vow. Elena looked up, searching their joined fingers, the flicker of comprehension dawning like sun on water. The junior officer excused himself awkwardly, towing Javier to holding, leaving the three in a fragile tableau. Annie knelt before her mother, the linoleum cold under her knees. Mom, I need you to see us. Not as a crime but as your daughter, happy, whole. Ariana's not the sea that takes. She's the shore that holds. Silence stretched, broken only by the distant crash of waves. Elena reached out, tracing Annie's freckled cheek, her touch tentative as a first step. I was wrong. The fire, the schemes, they came from fear, not hate. But fear's a poor master. Tears traced her own lines, silver rivulets on weathered skin. It wasn't absolution, not yet, but a crack in the fortress, light seeping through. They left the station together. The dawn air crisp with salt and possibility. Ariana drove them to the cliffs, the road winding like a released breath. At the overlook, the site of their first kiss now scarred by wind but unbowed. They stood, arms entwined, watching the sea reclaim its calm. What now? Annie murmured, head on Ariana's shoulder. Now we build, Ariana replied, kissing her temple. Memories that can't burn. A life that honors all our parts. Below, the waves whispered agreement, a rhythmic hymn to resilience. But drama's aftershocks lingered. Back in El Faro, word spread like wildfire. Not of scandal, but of Elena's uncharacteristic mercy. She released Javier with a warning, no charges pressed, a quiet nod to Ariana's clean slate. The village, sensing the tide's turn, thawed slowly. Clara brought figs to the bookstore. Mateo offered fishing trips for the ladies. Elena, in her own halting way, extended olive branches, a shared coffee at the harbor, questions about Annie's latest canvas that veered toward Ariana without recoil. Yet the deepest emotion bloomed in private reckonings. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in bruised purples, Elena invited them to dinner, not as chief but as mother. The table groaned under paella and aioli, the air tentative with small talk. Tell me about your shop, Elena said to Ariana, fork paused midair. Ariana smiled, recounting a customer's delight over a rare Auden first edition. Elena listened, nodding, the silence between words filling with understanding. After, as they cleared plates, Elena pulled a small box from her pocket. A new camera, simple and sturdy. For the photos I can't replace, but maybe new ones. Her voice caught and Annie hugged her, the embrace fierce and forgiving. the scent of starch and sea mingling like reconciliation. Winter deepened, bringing holidays laced with tentative joy. They decorated the family home with Ariana's touch. Garlands of dried oranges, candles flickering like hopes. On Christmas Eve, under a sky pricked with stars, the three walked the beach, lanterns in hand, casting golden pools on the sand. Elena spoke of her youth, a forbidden flirtation with a village girl cut short by duty and doubt. "I chose the badge over the heart," she confessed. "Don't make my mistake." The admission was a gift, unwrapping layers of shared humanity. Annie and Ariana exchanged glances, their love a quiet triumph, not conquest but communion. Spring arrived with renewal, the cliffs greening, wildflowers nodding to the sun. Annie's gallery show in nearby Huelva featured the Ariana series, titled Shores of the Soul, drawing crowds from Seville. Elena attended, badge left at home, her presence a silent pride. As applause swelled, she whispered to Annie, "She's good for you. For us." But romance's flame required tending. In the bloom of summer's return, Annie and Ariana escaped to a finca in the hills, a week of uninterrupted bliss. Hiking terraced vineyards, cooking tortilla under olive shades, nights wrapped in each other against the chill. "Marry me?" Ariana asked one dawn on a hilltop overlooking the world, a simple silver band glinting in her palm. Celtic knot, symbol of eternity. Annie's yes was a vow sealed with tears and laughter, the valley echoing their joy. The wedding was a quiet affair, defying El Faro's traditions yet weaving them in, a humanistic tapestry of old and new. Held on the cliffs at golden hour, with the Atlantic as witness, guests numbered few but fervent. Mateo and Clara, Sophia with her family, a bridge mended over shared coffees, villagers who'd chosen curiosity over convention. Elena stood as witness, her dress a soft blue instead of uniform, eyes misty as she clasped Ariana's hand. "Welcome to the family," she said, the words a hard-won grace. Vows exchanged under an arch of jasmine and olive branches, Annie's voice steady. "You taught me love isn't hidden. It's the light we carry." Ariana's reply. "And you showed me home is where hearts align, not where maps end." Rings slipped on, simple gold with sea glass inlays, and the kiss, soft, profound, drew cheers that scattered gulls skyward. The reception unfolded on the beach, lanterns bobbing like stars fallen to earth, tables laden with jamon and gazpacho, guitars strumming flamenco laced with jazz riffs from a local band. Elena danced with Annie, steps awkward but earnest, whispering, "I see it now, the strength in your choices." Later, she pulled Ariana aside, a bottle of Rioja in hand. "I was blind, Hija. Forgive an old fool." Ariana's hug was genuine, the elder woman's frame yielding. "Forgiven. And thank you for letting love win." Life post-vows settled into a rhythm as natural as the tides. Annie and Ariana opened their hybrid space. A gallery bookshop in the village square, walls alive with local artists, shelves mingling Lorca with LGBTQ+ voices from Audre Lorde to contemporary voices like Carmen Maria Machado. Elena contributed a shelf of her own. True crime memoirs annotated with her insights, a bridge to shared stories. The vandalism scar faded, replaced by community workshops, Annie teaching sketching, Ariana leading book clubs on resilience. Yet drama's embers glowed in unexpected flares. A year on, Elena faced her own crossroads. A promotion to regional command in Cadiz, pulling her from El Faro's embrace. "It means leaving you both," she confessed over Sunday paella, fork tracing patterns in her plate. Annie's heart twinged, old fears surfacing, but Ariana spoke first. "Go. Be the chief you were meant to be. We'll visit, make it our tradition." The farewell was bittersweet, Elena's patrol car laden with boxes, the three embracing on the harbor steps. "You gave me back my daughter," Elena told Ariana, voice thick. "And a family I didn't know I needed." As she drove off, the village seemed smaller, but Annie felt larger. Love's expansion infinite. Their first anniversary dawned stormy, waves thundering like applause. Annie surprised Ariana with a cliffside easel, painting her anew against the tumult. "For the memories that endure," she said, brushstrokes capturing the wild beauty of their bond. Ariana, in turn, gifted a leather-bound journal. Our story, pages filled with pressed flowers, ticket stubs, notes from Elena's letters, proof of a narrative rewritten. Challenges came as they do in any life. Ariana's bookstore chain from Sevilleite expansion. tempting with offers that meant city lights over coastal calm. Annie wrestled doubt, Madrid's pull echoing her youth, but chose roots. Here with you is where the art lives, she declared, their decision a reaffirmation. Elena's visits became anchors, her stories evolving. Tales of progressive colleagues, a quiet pride in Annie's exhibits reaching Lisbon. One Christmas she arrived with a framed photo, not burned but cherished. The three of them on the beach, lanterns aglow, captured by Mateo. The only one that matters, she said, hanging it in the gallery. Years folded like waves, carrying them forward. Annie's paintings gained acclaim. A solo show in Barcelona drawing tears from critics who saw the soul in her strokes. Ariana penned a memoir, Whispers from the Shore, excerpts reading like love letters to resilience, dedicated to Annie my cliff, to Elena my anchor. It sold modestly but touched deeply, villagers buying copies with furtive smiles. At 35, Annie felt the pull of legacy. Not Elena's badge but creation's call. They fostered a teen from the village, a shy artist named Lucia, her sketches raw with unspoken pains. Watching her bloom under their care, Annie understood. Love's humanism lies in the chain, passing light to the next. On their 10th anniversary, they returned to the cliffs, now weathered but steadfast. Elena joined, grayer but no less fierce, toasting with sherry. To fires that forge, not destroy. As sunset bled into dusk, they danced, three shadows merging against the horizon, the sea singing its eternal song. In El Faro, where winds once carried whispers of betrayal, now breezes bore laughter. Annie and Ariana's love, once a fragile flame, burned eternal. A beacon for the lost, proof that even in drama's depths, emotion's tide leads to humanistic shores. And in the quiet nights as stars wheeled overhead, Annie would trace Ariana's face, whispering, "We made it." Ariana's reply always, "And we'll keep making it, together."